This woman named Laci Peterson was pregnant and living in Modesto, California. She was excitedly preparing for the arrival of her first child. However, on December 24th, 2002, she went missing, prompting a massive search effort. Tragically, her remains were discovered in April 2003, along with her unborn son, Connor. Laci Peterson, a vibrant 27-year-old, was married to Scott Peterson, a man who outwardly appeared to have everything: a loving wife, a stable job, and a baby on the way. Living in Modesto, California, the Petersons seemed like the perfect couple. Laci, 8 months pregnant with their first child, Connor, was eagerly preparing for her new role as a mother, excited to celebrate Christmas with her family. However, what appeared to be a fairy tale life was hiding dark secrets that would soon unravel into a national tragedy. On the morning of December 24th, 2002, Laci vanished from her home, leaving behind a chilling absence. Scott claimed that he had gone fishing that day at Berkeley Marina, while Laci stayed behind to walk their dog. When Scott returned home later that afternoon, he found the house empty. Laci's dog was wandering the neighborhood with its leash still attached, but there was no sign of her. Scott made a call to Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, feigning concern and reporting his wife missing. This call would set off a chain of events leading to one of the most infamous murder cases in American history. The Modesto Police Department was notified, and the search for Laci began immediately. Friends, family, and neighbors scoured the area, hoping for any trace of her. As the search intensified, it became clear that something sinister was at play. Laci, who was due to give birth in a matter of weeks, would not have disappeared without a trace. The community clung to hope, but behind closed doors, investigators were beginning to suspect foul play. From the beginning, Scott's behavior raised red flags. While the world searched frantically for his pregnant wife, Scott appeared disturbingly calm, detached even. At one point, he was seen joking and laughing, a demeanor completely incongruent with the gravity of the situation. His coldness was starkly contrasted by Laci's family, who were devastated by her disappearance and worked tirelessly to bring her home. The mystery deepened when it was revealed that Scott had been hiding an affair with Amber Frey, a woman from Fresno who was completely unaware of his marriage. Scott had told Amber that he was single, and they had been dating for over a month. On December 9th, 2002, just 2 weeks before Laci disappeared, Scott had coldly informed Amber that he had lost his wife and would be spending Christmas alone. This lie, told while Laci was still very much alive, painted a sinister picture of Scott's intentions. As the days turned into weeks, suspicion around Scott grew stronger. The media caught wind of the story, and the Peterson family became the center of a national media storm. Scott's affair with Amber was soon made public, and the once sympathetic husband became the prime suspect in his wife's disappearance. His efforts to maintain an innocent facade crumbled as the investigation exposed the cracks in his story. In the immediate aftermath of Laci's disappearance, the Modesto Police Department launched an exhaustive search effort, but as weeks passed with no trace of Laci, detectives began to shift their focus inward, narrowing in on Scott, whose behavior was erratic and suspicious. He had reported Laci missing on the evening of December 24th, 2002, claiming he had been fishing that morning at the Berkeley Marina, while Laci stayed home to prepare for the day. But inconsistencies in his story began to surface almost immediately. The initial breakthrough came when Scott's mistress, Amber Frey, contacted the police. Amber, a massage therapist from Fresno, had no idea that Scott was married, let alone expecting a child with his wife. When she found out about Laci's disappearance through news reports, Amber felt compelled to come forward. In doing so, she became one of the most important witnesses in the case. Amber revealed that Scott had told her that he was single and had lost his wife, making this false claim just 2 weeks before Laci vanished. His words took on a sinister tone after Laci's disappearance, suggesting his intent to rid himself of his wife and child. With Amber's cooperation, detectives secretly recorded several phone calls between her and Scott. In these calls, Scott continued to lie about his situation, expressing no remorse or concern over his missing wife. His casual attitude toward the disappearance, even as he was thrust into the national spotlight, painted a disturbing picture of a man devoid of empathy. The tapes, which would later play a critical role in court, captured the depth of Scott's deception. His cold, calculated attempts to to keep Amber engaged while publicly presenting himself as a grieving husband only deepened suspicion. In early April 2003, nearly 4 months after Laci's disappearance, the case took a gruesome turn. The decomposed remains of a female body and a small fetus were found washed ashore in San Francisco Bay, near the very spot where Scott claimed to have been fishing on the day Laci went missing. DNA testing later confirmed that the bodies belonged to Laci and her unborn son, Connor. The discovery shattered any remaining hope that Laci was still alive and marked the beginning of a murder investigation. The condition of Laci's remains revealed the brutality of the crime. Investigators theorized that Scott had premeditated the murder of his wife and their unborn child, perhaps to free himself from the responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood. The affair with Amber Frey, which Scott had concealed from his family and friends, became the prosecution's key to understanding his motives. It was no longer a case of a missing person. It was a case of first-degree murder. Scott Peterson, once a grieving husband, was now a murder suspect. His double life, carefully hidden behind the facade of a loving husband, had been exposed. The image of Scott as the perfect husband shattered completely when he was arrested on April 18, 2003 in San Diego. In his car, police found cash, camping equipment, and several items that indicated he might have been preparing to flee. His hair was dyed blonde, a clear attempt to disguise himself and evade capture. The nation was horrified. How could a man, a husband, and an expectant father coldly plot the murder of his wife and unborn child? The betrayal was unfathomable. Scott's affair with Amber Frey and his blatant lies to his family painted him as a man devoid of remorse, capable of carrying out such a heinous crime without a shred of guilt. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Scott Peterson's actions were not the result of a momentary lapse in judgment, but rather the calculated choices of a man desperate to escape his responsibilities. Laci's disappearance was not an accident. It was premeditated homicide, fueled by Scott's desire to start a new life without the burden of a wife and child. The tragedy of Laci Peterson's murder was not just the loss of a life, but the destruction of a family. Scott's betrayal went far beyond infidelity. It was the ultimate act of treachery. In his pursuit of freedom, he robbed the world of 2 innocent lives, leaving a trail of grief and unanswered questions in his wake. This case would soon move from the realm of speculation to a courtroom, where the full extent of Scott's crimes would be laid bare. The investigation into Laci's murder had only just begun, and the nation waited with bated breath for justice to be served. The trial of Scott Peterson began in June 2004, captivating the nation as it unfolded in a media circus. The prosecution's case was built on a mountain of circumstantial evidence, painting Scott as a man who saw his wife and unborn child as obstacles to the life he desired. His affair with Amber Frey, the suspicious behavior in the aftermath of Laci's disappearance, and his attempted flight to Mexico were all woven together to form a chilling portrait of a man willing to commit the ultimate betrayal for personal freedom. Prosecutors argued that Scott had meticulously planned the murder of his pregnant wife, staging his alibi with the fishing trip and dumping her body into San Francisco Bay. They emphasized his cold demeanor during the search for Laci, contrasting his disinterest with the agony of Laci's family, who held out hope for her safe return. The prosecution also introduced the recorded phone calls between Scott and Amber Frey, highlighting his deception and the lies he told to cover up his involvement in the crime. The defense, led by Mark Garagos, tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative, arguing that there was no direct evidence linking Scott to the crime. They suggested that Laci had been abducted by strangers and that the real killers were still at large. However, this theory failed to hold water as the prosecution laid out a compelling timeline of events, underscored by Scott's own actions. Amber Frey's testimony proved pivotal. She took the stand and recounted her relationship with Scott, describing him as manipulative and dishonest. The jury listened to hours of taped conversations between Scott and Amber, where he pretended to be a grieving widower while knowing full well that his wife and unborn child were already dead. Amber's cooperation with the authorities, coupled with Scott's blatant disregard for the truth, was a devastating blow to the defense. One of the most dramatic moments of the trial came when forensic experts testified about the discovery of Laci and Connor's remains. The images of the decomposed bodies, though difficult to view, underscored the brutality of the crime. Laci's body had been weighted down with anchors, while Connor's remains had washed ashore, exposing the horror of what had transpired in the bay. Though the exact cause of Laci's death couldn't be determined, the prosecution argued that the condition of her body pointed to premeditation and a deliberate effort to hide the evidence. Throughout the trial, Scott remained largely emotionless, showing little reaction as the details of his crimes were laid bare. His stoicism, which might have been interpreted as composure, only deepened public perception of him as a remorseless killer. In contrast, Laci's family was visibly shaken, their heartbreak on full display as they mourned not only Laci, but the future she and Connor had been robbed of. As the trial neared its conclusion, both sides made their final arguments. The prosecution emphasized Scott's betrayal and the overwhelming circumstantial evidence that painted him as a calculating killer. They asked the jury to deliver justice for Laci and Connor, reminding them of the gruesome fate that awaited the young mother and her unborn child. Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson and second-degree murder for the death of Connor. The courtroom erupted in mixed emotions. Laci's family cried tears of relief, while Scott remained impassive, still showing no remorse for his actions. The penalty phase of the trial followed, with the prosecution seeking the death penalty. Laci's family provided victim impact statements, expressing the deep pain and loss they had endured since her death. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, tearfully described the devastation of losing her daughter and unborn grandson, while Scott's family pleaded for his life to be spared. In March 2005, Scott Peterson was sentenced to death penalty for the murders of Laci and Connor Peterson. Judge Alfred A. DeLucchi formally sentenced Scott Peterson to death by lethal injection. He was transferred to San Quentin State Prison. His death sentence has been under appeal and was temporarily overturned in 2020 due to issues with the jury selection process. As of now, Scott Peterson has been in prison since his arrest in April 2003. This means he has been incarcerated for over 20 years. While the trial brought closure to Laci's family in the form of a conviction, the emotional scars left by Scott's betrayal would never fully heal. Scott Peterson's case serves as a tragic reminder of how deception, infidelity, and greed can lead to unimaginable violence. The life that Scott so desperately sought to escape cost him everything: his freedom, his family, and ultimately his life. For the nation, the murder of Laci Peterson became a symbol of betrayal at its most extreme. A husband who turned on his wife and child for selfish desires became the embodiment of cold-blooded premeditation. Though justice was served in a legal sense, the loss of Laci and Connor remains an unfillable void for those who love them. Let me share the life lessons from this story to cultivate an aware mindset that can help you address any challenges in your family. 1. Value of honesty. Always prioritize honesty in your relationships. Betrayal can lead to irreversible harm, so maintain transparency to build trust. 2. Importance of communication. Foster open communication to prevent misunderstandings. Sharing feelings and concerns can strengthen family bonds and resolve conflicts before they escalate. 3. Consequences of choices. Be mindful of your decisions. Every choice has repercussions, so think carefully about how your actions may affect others. 4. Cherishing loved ones. Life is fleeting. Take time to appreciate your loved ones and nurture those relationships, as they are invaluable. By applying these lessons, you can create a healthier family dynamic and solve problems before they become crises. If you found this insightful, please like and subscribe for more content that inspires and educates.